Hello, this is Jen from Red Toad Art Studio, and today we're going to do part 2 of our amazing abstracts. This is the first one of the series, but it's part 2 because we drew it in our last video, and today we are going to paint it. So I have inked and erased my lines and have this one all ready to paint. So the next thing we need to do is tape it down to our board. So let's do that next. Now I have made little lines on here to line up my tape so I get fairly straight and even borders. We hope. If you don't like all these lines that you'll either have to leave or fix later after your painting is done, these ink lines, you might want to draw a pencil frame around your picture so that you don't go beyond that 1/4 of an inch edge. There, we're all taped up. Now we need to decide what paints we're going to use. And you may have only one set and have no choice. Actually, I have several, but I do think that most of you probably following this channel have something like this. Now, you may have better paints, and there are a lot of wonderful paints out there. So use whatever set you have, because this will work fine with any watercolors. But today we're going to work with Crayola, just so that you can see how to use some of these less expensive brands and still get a neat picture. But I do want to show you, I experimented yesterday with one of my better brands. And I'm not sure that I'm saying this right. It is Shinhan Professional Watercolor. And the colors are very intense. Now today I tried it with watercolor. It's a beautiful color. Can you see that? But this is as dark and as intense as I can make turquoise by mixing my Crayolas. And see the difference? That is one difference in your less expensive paints. They don't have as much pigment in them. So you can't get colors that are quite as intense. So if you like these dark colors, and they are beautiful, eventually you'll want to invest in a more professional set of paints. And I would even suggest moving on to tube paints, because then you can get the full intensity of the pigments in these. But you've seen how this is. Today we're going to do it in Crayola so that you can see how they work. So I'm going to move this one aside and show you how to mix our paints in Crayola to get our turquoise. We're going to mix, let's see, let me get my colors. I have a swatch here. We are going to mix blue and green together to get turquoise. So let me move my paint set up here so you can see us do that. Now, you need to activate your Crayola set with a couple drops of water in each color. Come down here and make quite a puddle, because it takes quite a bit of this paint to do the whole background. Now, it's not a tragedy if you run out. In fact, I ran out on this other one that I tried and had to mix more. And it wasn't terribly hard to match it. But it's better if we don't have to even worry about that. So, dip your brush into this blue. Has it gotten nice and creamy? If it has, it's ready to go. And stir that into the water. Now, I want a little more blue in that. Now, there's 2 different blues in your Crayolas, and you can experiment with which one you like the best. I did both of them and didn't see a whole lot of difference in them. Okay, now we need to add green. So, wipe off our brush on our piece of paper towel. Give it a little clean here. Now go into your green, get that stirred up until it's nice and creamy. And now we're going to add green. And this is what will give us our turquoise color. See that? Turning a beautiful shade of turquoise. Whoops. Now let's stir this up well and test it out on a scrap piece of paper. See what we have here. Ah, yes, we have turquoise. Now, I would really like that to be darker, but I don't know that it's possible. Let's see, here's some others we had done before, and it's almost exactly the same. So that's as dark as I could get earlier. So we will have a light turquoise. So I'm going to move my paint out of the way. Now, if you noticed on the one I did earlier, in fact, I'll show you on this one because I had one spot that I hadn't gotten painted before. We're going on with a very wet brush onto dry paper. Now I have a little extra paint here. Let's see, we'll mop it up a little bit. And then we're using salt, plain old table salt. And it's best if you get it in a shaker, or you can just pick it up with your fingers and sprinkle it on. And as we do each section, we're going to sprinkle salt on it. And as that sets, it starts giving us this really neat texture in the background. Do you see these textures here? When the salt dries, we will brush it off and we'll have very neat texture. So let's move this over. And we want to paint each section of our background using that method. And if you're right-handed, start here on the left. If you're left-handed, start on the right. So I'm going to go to my upper left here. Well, I shouldn't say upper, should I? Kind of middle left. And we want to keep this wet. The salt won't do its magic if we try to put it on dry paint. We want to put it on wet paint. So we can't take too long getting this on, but we still want to be as neat as we possibly can be. Alrighty. See how we're getting that on? Alright, now, salt shaker. Salt on our paint. Seems funny, doesn't it, to use something from the kitchen. Now these little spots right here, I'm going to pick them up while I'm here. They're so tiny we won't worry about salt. Okay. Now I think I'll go right down here. Do the same thing. Brush off any salt that landed there from your last little segment. And we're going to work through this whole picture, through every little background segment. We're going to paint it and then salt it. Now this is going to dry fairly light. And I really do like the super dark colors. If we hand mixed, we could have gotten a fairly dark blue and done this with a dark blue. You might want to try that. Salt. Okay. So I'm going to work clear across here, and then I will be back with you when I get that done. Just quickly, I forgot to tell you, some of these larger sections, you may want to only do maybe about half of it before you put your salt on, because this dries fairly quick, and once it dries, the salt won't do that magic. finishing up our last little segment here. And let's give it a little dash of salt. Now, it just seems like we just got started painting and we don't want to quit, do we? But you know what? We do have to quit for a little while. This needs to dry before we can move on. But before you stop, take a look. Are there any little sections that you want to be this color? And you know, I think I want the background here behind my square to show as the background color. So I'm going to add that while I'm here. And then actually we probably need to let this dry maybe an hour or so. Even overnight wouldn't hurt. But I'm thinking an hour or so. And then I will be back to show you the next step. So, okay, it's about an hour later. And I have come back and my painting is dry. I have wiped off all the salt. And look at that texture. Isn't that great? So the next thing we need to do is start coloring in some of our circles. Now, sometimes it's really hard to decide on colors. And sometimes it also helps to look at a color wheel. Let's go to this side. Blue-green, the one they list here, is very close to my turquoise. And if I want to know a possible color to use with it, I can go straight down to a complementary color, which is red-orange. And we have a red-orange in our Crayola set. These are the two reds. This is kind of a red, and this is a red with some orange in it. And this is the one we're going to use, this red-orange color. So we can just pick some parts that we want to do red-orange. And this one, we did this. That's not in our new picture, but this circle is, and these stripes are. So let's do some red-orange. So we need to activate the red-orange in our set. And I think mine is ready to paint with. So let's paint this circle right here. Yes, this is perfect. And now I'm just dipping out of my watercolor pan in my Crayola set. I activated it and I'm dipping straight from the top of it to try to get a that is so I can get as deep of a red-orange as possible. Now sometimes it actually helps to give it 2 coats of paint. Let this one dry and it's perfectly okay to go over this with another coat and get it a little more intense. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now let's go over and put some red-orange stripes in this circle. All right. Now, is there any other place I'd like to have that red-orange? I think perhaps let's do this little box sack color. Now, I'll have to be careful and not get my hand into my wet paint. I should have probably done this first. Anything else I should do? I think perhaps we'll do those inner circles there in this color. Now we need to find a couple more colors to use. And there's only one complementary color, which was this. So we kind of need to look elsewhere. Clean my brush. Let's look at that color wheel again. It gives me other options. It has what it calls a triad. I could use a yellow-orange and a purple. Would both go with it. And if you notice, that's what I used on this one. We had the turquoise, the red-orange, the yellow-orange, and the purple. Now they'll be a little bit different in our Crayola colors because they aren't as intense. But let's see how it comes out. Anyway, let's use the darker yellow that's in Crayola. There's two yellows. There's a light yellow and a darker yellow. We're going to use this yellow. We've used this red-orange. And we will use, I think, this purple right here. So, let's do these scallops in a nice yellow. Now this is much brighter than what was on my other one with the more expensive paints. It's not bad, it's just different, and you will have to deal with different types of colors in your less expensive paints. Probably one of the main reasons artists move on and pay a little bit more so they have more options with the colors that's either in the set or they can mix from the set. But you can still get some really neat pictures with your less expensive. I'm not going to say cheaper because that makes it sound like it's not good. Less expensive sets. So if all you can afford is Crayola, don't let that stop you from making art. On the other hand, if you can afford to get a better set of Pro Paints, don't stop doing that either because those are wonderful paints. There's a lot of brands out there, and at this point I'm not going to say which ones are better than others, but there's a lot of good ones out there. Now you might notice that I kind of went over with my blue here in a few spots. I want to give you a little trick how to minimize that. Let's go ahead and paint it with our wet paint right over that blue, and yes, it still shows, but we're going to let it sit there just a few seconds and let it start to work on that undercolor of paint. Now if we want that color to still stay there, then we don't touch it again, we just let it sit there. But if we want it to be gone, let's give it a little bit of work over with our brush, and it will kind of dissolve into our yellow and almost disappear. Isn't that great? So that's why they say not to overwork your paint, because if you have something under there, it will start to dissolve it and it will mix in with your top layer. But like this, where I would like to get rid of that color, we can use that to our advantage and get rid of that undercolor. And I don't know, there's people I'm sure that have a very steady hand and don't get paint where they don't want paint. But you know what? I'm a grandma. I'm a grandma several times over, and I'm not so steady anymore. And I'm always getting paint where I don't want it. So these little tricks to fix my mistakes are very handy. Go back here. Let's see if we can get rid of that one. There it goes. Isn't that wonderful? Now I do have a little pencil showing there, but that's all right. All right. Where else would we like to put yellow? I'm referring to this one that I've already done. We did our gear a yellow, and we did some yellow stripes. So let's go up here and do this gear, that same yellow color. Now again, I probably should have done that first so I don't run into this paint with my hand. That's all right. We can do it just fine. Okay, let's move over here and do some yellow stripes here. This is a very much lighter feeling with these more pastel colors that's in your Crayola. It's just a different feel. It's not wrong, it's different. And know that probably every brand of paint you buy will have its own personality. We could call it its own paintonality. And you need to get used to the paint you have and see what you can do with it. You will probably end up with several different brands and palettes of paint, and you'll use specific ones to get specific results. Get intimate with your paint. Know what your paint does under different circumstances. Okay, yes, I think maybe let's put some yellow right here. Now I am just kind of choosing what I do as I go. I'm looking at the old picture I did yesterday, but I'm also doing some things different. I do think there's times when you should plan out all the colors on a painting. But there's other times when it's fun to just, as they call it, fly by the seat of your pants. Decide what you're going to do as you're doing it. Alrighty. Do we want any more yellow? I think we're going to move on to, let's see, our purple. We may come back to yellow again, but let's go on and move on and put some purple in. So, we're going to have some purple stripes here. Now this is going on a little streaky. And it probably would be best if I did a second coat over this. I don't know that I will, because this is going to be enough to show you how to do your own. But it's perfectly okay to do a second coat over it, even a third coat. But let the first one dry first, and then go over it if you decide you want more. A little more smooth color or a little darker color. Now I think we're going to do some of the other abstracts. Perhaps we'll use some other paints and you can see some of the differences. But I don't think we'll do anything that you can't do in one fashion or another with the less expensive paints. And I am just using watercolor paper here, 140 pound watercolor paper. There are watercolor papers that are made differently and are wonderful. But a lot of us can't afford that to do unless we're doing a very special painting. And I don't even feel like I'm up to that level yet. I'm just kind of practicing yet in my painting. But no, you can improve in every area. You can get better paints, you can get better paper, you can get better brushes. It sounds like life, isn't it? I think the secret is to learn how to use what you have at the moment. All right, let's put some purple here. You know, I don't know how this painting's going to work out either. We're going to find that one out together. I do find this purple can be have a little tendency to be streaky. that's where your second coat can help out some. Now some of this won't be as noticeable when we get done because we're going to add some marks on top with our pen and some other paint. We're going to use a little bit of acrylic paint. I'll show you the kind when we get there that you can buy in the craft store. Less than $1 for a bottle. To add some more interest to this. Think of this as layers. The first layer was our turquoise. This is our second layer. And then we're going to add a third layer of markings with pens and other paint and things like that. Okay, let's move over here and put some purple in this circle. All right. Oh, let's see. Let's do this purple. Pull this down a little bit so you can see it. There we go. Now we just need to add, we have this and these, and this around here. And I think these are going to have a base of black. Okay. And some of this we can start to work on. We have to avoid the wet spots. We don't want to hit our wet spots of paint. Now I suggest we go to our pens. If you have some of that metallic paint, or if there's a color you especially like, you can do this with watercolor paints or other types of paints and do these however you want. But today, I want to do these with my Sharpie fine point. There might be some points to this, some parts of this little area here where I'll want to use the fine point. And I'm going to do those in black. Now I'm going to finish these and be back with you in a few minutes. Okay. Let's see. Perhaps these should be black. Let's do these black. Now, I'm not real fond of the way my picture looks at this stage. It's the next stage that puts the makeup on. And as I was saying, this stage, I'm not too fond of the picture yet. It's the next stage that puts the bling on, or the makeup on, the glitter on. And I think it's the most fun stage, too. Let me get this around. All right. Now, let's see what we can do to this to spiff it up a little bit. Let's take our fine point and come over to this one. And we're going to put lines, little lines on the yellow. Oops. Let's get my pen to work. Sometimes when they've been used on paint, they get a little clogged up, and you have to, and you need to scribble and get them cleaned up, just like that. Be sure it's dry as possible. If it's wet, it will clog up your pen fairly quickly. Okay, let's come over and stipple. I think that's the word we want. Stipple dots on here. And I'm not sure which pen I want to use. I may use my... Yeah, let's use this pen for that. We're going to do that on the orange. Just little dots all over. See how those... Makes our painting more interesting already, doesn't it? Just these little marks. Now, let's work around this with our black fine point pen. Here in camera. And we're going to put dots in the center of every one of these. Black dots. Still a little wet. If you have the ability to wait a couple hours between these layers, that's what you should do. Yep, we got to dry that a little more. We'll come back to that. Okay, while we're waiting for that to dry, there's some other marks we can put on. Now, if you had some gouache paint, you could probably use that. If you have a white paint marker or a white gel pen, some of those will work on putting some white decorations on your paint. But you know, I think the easiest thing to use is this craft paint, which I find at Walmart. I'm sure there's lots of other stores that carry that. This is Apple Barrel White Craft Paint. Super inexpensive. So just shake your paint up. Get you some kind of palette, and we're going to make dots. You won't need a whole lot of this, just a drip or two. Now, there's two ways. If you're lucky like me and you have a set of, I guess you call these styluses. I have several of these with different size little ball points on the end. And these are great for dotting things. You can see that? You can also use the tip end of a paintbrush. And I'm going to show you both ways. In fact, let's just start out with this one. Let me get the paint over here. Straight down into your paint and over here and just dot. Dot. And you probably can't do more than two without dipping back in your paint. And there I kind of made a mess. I hadn't tried this particular brush end out. It's not too bad once you get used to it. I did do it kind of messy over there. You might want to practice this a little bit on a scrap piece of paper before you do it on your good paint, so you don't make a mess like I did over there. But you know what? You can learn from my mistakes. And I make plenty of them. There we go. Isn't that neat? Now what I can do when this dries, come over and cover that little edge I went over with my black pen. Now I'll show you how to do the same thing with the stylus. I want to make dots. Where do I want to make dots? Up and down, I think, on this purple. So I'm going to do the same thing, but it makes a little more precise dots. See how those came out? Now after every couple one, I need to dip into my paint. Now, this one came out of what they call a rock painting set I found on Amazon. So if you would like a neat set of these, look for rock painting. And they have a whole set of these you can buy. Hey, it's getting fancied up already, isn't it? Now, you wouldn't have to stay with white paint. You can use other colors of paint on here if you'd like. And there's a lot of beautiful colors that you can buy. Alrighty. I wonder if this is dried any yet. And what else would I like to do? You know, you can also use the end of a pencil where the eraser is if you want a big dot. We might be able to do one like that right there. Let me find a pencil. Alright, I found a pencil. Now I'm going to test this first. Let's see what size. Ooh, makes a nice big dot. That might be almost too big. How about we put some white dots in on this orange? Look at that nice big dot. And you can't hardly see that. Let's go down here. Put another one here. Alrighty, let's put a white dot here. Now, I think that's all I'll do with that big one. But see, this is just a plain old pencil. You kind of want a flat eraser, one that hasn't been used a lot. And you can dot with that. Now, let's go back to this one and put some medium dots in. There we go. I'm going to go over in the center of these orange dots and have a little white dot there. I think those call for my smaller tool here. There we go. All right, are there other things we'd like to do? Yes, there is. I want to dot along my little black pathways here. All right, so what we need to do now is see if we can go back and finish these black dots around this edge. Do you like what's happening? I hope you do. Let's see how we're doing there. See if these have dried enough. It's really important that these are dry. I'd encourage you to let these things dry for a couple, 3 hours. Overnight can be even better. Okay. Do you see other places we want to add things? I'm sure you could find all kinds of places to add. I'd like to actually put some black dots on top of the white, but that's still too wet. What about if we... I don't know if this will work, but we're going to try it. We are going to add black lines around this outer edge. The thing is, once you start this, you're committed. You just have to keep going and seeing if you like it. And I would say, you know, it might take you 2 or 3 of these before you come up with several things you really like, and then to make a really great picture just the way you want it. You can make an amazing picture. Or you might be lucky and your very first one will be amazing. Just keep working at it and keep trying. Don't get discouraged. All right. I think I've done about all I'm going to do with this. Maybe tiny black dots on this. All right. I do want to make a white dot here. Let's see if it's dried enough for me to do that. I'm going to use the end of my paintbrush, since that makes a bigger dot. There we go. And this is way too wet to make a black dot, but eventually I will. So I think I'm going to sign this now. And except for those 2 dots, I think this is going to be finished. Where shall I sign it? I think I'll sign it about here. I will warn you, this is hard on your pens. You have to be sure and clean them off afterwards. Alrighty. Shall we take the tape off and see what it's looking like? When you take your tape off, pull it away from the picture and move very slowly and gently because you don't want to tear your painting. Now, see, this is where I said we probably should have drawn a line and we wouldn't have inked on that area of our painting. But I wonder if our white paint won't take care of that, and we can cover that up. Shall we try it? Would you like to see if it works? We can just leave it like this, because if we put it in a frame, that won't show anyway. So if it doesn't work, it really won't hurt a thing, will it? Or we might like the looks of that going outside of the frame. What do you think? I'm going to try to paint those out. I'm going to get a little flat brush and I'm going to get that white paint up and just go over those. Now it may take a couple of layers. But we can do that. As I said, I wasn't thinking, and we should have drawn a pencil frame around that area. But, you know, I'm a granny, and I don't remember things. And if you forgot or didn't know to do that, because I didn't tell you, you can fix it in this way. Hello. Here's a better way to protect your edges, as you'll see as you watch the rest of this video. Use your ruler. You can eyeball about 1/4 of an inch, or if you have one of these see-through rulers, you can follow these inner lines and just lay your ruler down and draw clear across a solid line. And then you'll know not to draw, ink, or paint beyond that line. And it also gives you a good line to put your tape on. Just follow that line when you tape it. And then you will not do what I have done on most of my videos, because I'm an old lady and I forget things. I draw or paint over these edges, and then I have to go clean them up. And see, there we have a frame around our drawing, and it will work much better than the method I gave you in this movie. So I thought I would just jump in and let you know that there is a better way. So back